Hello, everyone. Good to see you all. Yes, my second stream for the day. Yeah, I've been busy little beaver. It's good to see a few faces, quite a few familiar faces. Anyway, let's just cycle through a couple of things. That was me earlier. I was setting up. Yeah, I know. It's just. G'day, Gusto. Good to see you for a second time. G'day, Turo. Good to see you guys. Yes, it's 8 o'clock on the dot in Hobart. So nice and in the evening. So we'll see how many people we get. It is 11 o'clock in the UK, so in the morning. So hopefully we get a few more that pop up. Anyway, guys, here's a few more. Hello, Richard. Early in the morning in Brazil. Yeah, I was sort of, this is pretty much the Eurasian one, but it does catch anybody on the East Coast of the Americas. Hi, Bo. Just got back from the market. Hope you got plenty of meat. Or found what you, because last time you were having a bit of a struggle trying to get a few things. Yep, because you guys are 1 hour ahead of the British Isles. Yep. I sort of, the way I sort of put the time slots there, I probably need to get to find a European one with the proper time dates and stuff like that and do it a bit better. That's why I actually put down on the comments. I put a whole lot of section on the comments to sort of clarify things because it's a bit, So, yep, New Zealand is 2 hours ahead of us. And yes, and also the time slot now that we've gone because of daylight savings on the east coast of Australia and the central standard date within, sort of, which is South Australia, we've sort of come back an hour, which sort of means that I was able to basically not have to go really much later. And that means now I can, in the winter, which is really good, I can get people from New Zealand as well, because it was, before the time slot was about 10, knocking it out to 12, it just pushed them out of that completely. But now that the time slot's, different, so fits a bit better. I'll just quickly cycle through. Some truffle cheese. Yes, so Bo's having some truffle, got some truffle cheese. I got some of those wonderful horse meat steward meats, 800 grams. Nice. That's a big steak, or big piece of meat, I mean. Yes, and yes, duck legs. Yeah, I haven't. It's a long time since I've had a lot of, like big birds. In that means like turkey, duck, and stuff. I mean, yeah, occasionally you get the sort of the cured turkey meat, but and I do get mackerel. That's not a problem. I get snap frozen, wild caught. So that's nice. But we don't get a lot of herring down here, which is a thing. Sort of another thing. So it's sort of mixed match at the moment with all this social isolation and all of the fishing boats not going out or very limited. It's a bit of a nuisance in that regard in terms of supply. G'day, Dominic. It's good to see you, mate. And there's Zach as well. G'day, mate. I'm going to the local maid boutique, Gelatissimo Harry, big ice cream maker. Uh, yes, no way I'm eating that stuff. Uh, yeah, look, they Valhalla, it's limited. The problem is there used to be one down in Salamanca, but they closed down, which meant that I had to drop back to Valhalla. So it's not not annoying, but it is a bit. But at least with Valhalla, they don't put any of that really nasty sort of stuff. They put cane sugar and all that. Yes, it is a bit not stuff that you should constantly eat, but sort of one of my cheats now and then. Yes, yes. Thank you. Yes. uh, we do. Christmas is the same. But it's basically because of the leap year and because of the saints, sort of because saints' names we celebrate. I mean, traditionally Greeks don't even celebrate birthdays; they celebrate the saint's name, which I usually celebrate on the 10th of February. So that's my saint name. So yeah, Saint Charalambos. So basically, but you know what can you do? It's one of those things. It's really hard to sort out those dates of the saints and everything else, and sort of that's why they couldn't for Easter go to the current calendar, which is also, if you really think about it, also is incorrect in some respects. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect fit. But for Christmas, it's the same. So for Christmas, they have moved to the new calendar. It's just one of those things. I don't see it as very important. It's just one of those traditions. It's really hard to break out of. So yeah, I know it's a good joke. I've heard it before from my work colleagues. Once every 4 years, it coincides. Yeah, culture changes. Yeah, I'm going to tell now the official priesthood to basically change it. Not going to happen. They'll just tell me to take a hike. When watching videos on how to cut up whole cow, my newest dream. Yep. Oh, look, I was lucky in a sense because the sort of environment that I lived in, my old man used to take me to slaughter animals from a very young age. So for me, it's just normal. And I've been hunting with my mates and all that, wallabies and stuff like that. And I know how to, cut them up as well and slaughter them and stuff like that and clean them out and whatever. So it's really normal. Not even the smells really annoy me. I know some people, it sort of can put them off. But I think it's a bit like, tribal kids that go out and get into it and actually are used to it. And Dad used to take me. We used to go up into the Central Highlands of Tasmania and actually, slaughter sheep and stuff like that. And basically, for Easter in particular, we would, because normally Dad would go up with a mate of his and actually slaughter, for like, to put in a deep fridge for the year or stuff like that. But when we went for Easter, picked up a number of animals. I'd be dragged along. So would my friend George, whose father used to come along as well. He actually lives in Greece now, George Shafakis. But we used to go together, and Dad used to have a big station wagon, a Holden 186. So yeah, I know. So we used to go up to that sort of area, get the animals, cut them. Dad would get me to basically slit its throat and all that, and hold it in the right way and all that. So, and eventually, he taught me a few more things, how to cut up animals properly and all that. So now, whenever we have anything on the spit, all that, I'm always the person who cuts up the meat after and sort of prepares it and all that sort of stuff. So, because nobody else knows how to do it. It's simple as that. So yes, it's it look, if you've, some videos are good to learn, but I mean, if you can get to a butcher that actually would give you an opportunity to teach you a few techniques, you could actually learn quite a bit. Some butchers are sort of more willing to show people. It depends. So you may get lucky. You can, there's nothing. You can always ask. There's nothing that'll be lost. I love both smoked and cured meats. Yep. In particular, I don't cook. I don't cook them. The cured ones, I usually have them raw, and I prefer raw cured meats. No cooking, so all the enzymes are there and stuff like that. And smoked. I do. I do like. I'm not really into smoked like lamb or stuff like that. The only smoked meat that I actually prefer is basically things like salmon, beef, and basically uh, and I don't even want like smoked large cuts, because it doesn't, like pork, it doesn't actually smoke right through properly. So I prefer smoked bacon. Bacon is far better than just regular pork chops or pork, steaks. They don't seem to uniformly smoke well, especially the thick ones, which is the way I enjoy them. Possibly if you had them really thin, it probably could work, but um, it's just one of those things. It seems like beef, when you smoke it, actually, it seems to permeate better and has a much nicer taste to it. It's just one of those things where other parts of pork, I prefer just bacon smoked. So, yeah, it's one of those things, that I'll actually show you. Hold on, I'll just show you the brand that I get. This is it, basically. It's Tasmanian wood smoked bacon, and it's basically from from the south, so made by Signet Butchery, and so it's called Victoria Ham and Bacon, the sort of outlet, and it's naturally cured, naturally wood smoked, and it's basically free range. Tasmanian. It's a Tasmanian product. It's nitrate free and all that sort of stuff. So it's an old fashioned, flavour and type. It's really nice. I sort of bought quite a bit, so I had to freeze it, but it's one of my favourite bacons. I sometimes can overeat it in that regard. And the thing is, I love it even raw. It's really nice, but because that's frozen, I'll cook that. But in that regard. But oops. Oops. Was that feedback? Okay. Yeah, it's hard to get it down here. We can get a lot of different seafoods, a lot of crustaceans in Tasmania, oysters. We have oyster beds, mussels, all the those sort of things. All mullocks, of different varieties. Yeah, it's just g'day Daniel. But at the moment, it's like everywhere, it's an absolute hassle to basically get things in that regard. Yeah. It's a bit hard for everyone. How did I get into cartography? God, that's a long story. I actually applied for for an IT position at the time because I was building computers. This was back in the 90s, and I was building computers and selling them. So good money, believe me. And then position came up in cartography because that was a time when cartography was shifting from traditional map production methods to computerized methods, and they actually wanted to create a sort of a digital form for the whole of Tasmania and that sort of stuff. And that's how I sort of got into it, coming in from a sort of a IT background. I didn't plan to stay there for a long time, but then, I sort of fell in love with it. So, and ever since I've sort of been involved in doing that sort of work and coding and all sorts of things in regards to it. Today, it's all, computer driven, computer coding, sort of template and automatic map production methods. It's very different than what it used to be in the past. And you have to run a whole, you code and create these special scripts of computer-based computer object-orientated programming languages we use to basically interrogate information and also extract information in a certain way. So to provide specific product requirements that people have or needs in that regard. So yeah, it's very interesting, but I accidentally got into it basically, because basically I was hoping to get in there, and then basically there was a position, potentially an IT one, but I didn't get it. And so I sort of stayed there hoping, something would come up. And then I got into the field and then did some training in the field and all that. And eventually after that, got so immersed and so involved in it that, sort of I was enjoying it too much. I didn't want to leave, in that regard. And I learned a lot from some of the old, especially the guys that had come out of the military that knew, they were the old survey type people and cartographers that really knew their shit. And I learned a lot from them. So I have to thank them for a lot of my knowledge, the foundation type knowledge. But yeah, by accident, really. I was going for 2 jobs. One fell through and I got that one. And I don't know why they actually picked me, but I think because they needed people that had computer knowledge, because they were transitioning from an old type of cartography to a new, and they wanted different blood, different type of people with different perspectives. And at the time, this back in the 90s, they didn't have as many, most cartographers were coming in either ex-military or had worked for councils, for the local government councils, and had, in the planning authorities and stuff like that. So, there wasn't a lot of expertise around to be able to harness. And so, they were happy to get anyone and teach them and actually train them up and stuff like that. So that's how I sort of came into it. It was a different time. Requirements then to get in weren't as, as difficult nowadays to get into certain, what I would call professions, technical professions. So yeah, very different era. But yes, it was all by accident. Me going for 2 positions, failing in one of them, accepting the second one, and then falling in love with it. So the rest is history. It's sort of just one of those things. I still built computers for quite some time, and then I shifted over to when computers became a sort of a commercial item, and there wasn't much of a profit margin. I gave up on those, and then I got into cabling. Actually, when I did a course in Murray Street, there was a company there. They were doing a course, so I sort of got a cabling license, and then basically started doing that. And then, wireless came around and that killed the cabling industry off, so, small businesses. Yeah, I had a couple of jobs that I did, but, it was really hard to get the jobs because I could only do them on the weekend. So it was only really small businesses. And then they gave up because they just went, wireless. So that dropped through. And then I did a bit of computer support on the side, in after hours. And then, I got sick and tired of doing all that. So I just stuck to my job and, you know, yes, it's things you do. Right, cheese heaven. Yes, I love cheese. I definitely love cheese. How many more people do you think would die from hospital being at capacity if we didn't flatten the curve? It's hard to say. Different countries would have different levels because depending on how many sick people with underlying conditions they have, or how many old people they have. So old societies with older populations would have bigger numbers to deal with. So it would vary. So something like a country like possibly Indonesia, for instance, you will not get as dramatic because they have a young population. Other countries that have older populations, like Japan, for instance, for them it would be probably a horrendous experience in that regard. So it really depends on the country in that regard. I mean, as I've said in the past, the best approach would have been to shut the borders really early, to basically quarantine people for a month, and basically put focus on money to basically test people. With any people call in and we'll test you for nothing, for free. Go send it people, take samples, test them, isolate them, and you would have got far more cooperation from the population that way, and you would have basically possibly gone to zero level of people in the population, as long as you kept the border secure from the very, very early stage. And then you wouldn't have these problems. You wouldn't have these questions. But as I said, politicians vacillated from one thing to another, from one extreme to another. They basically had incoherent policies, incoherent coordination amongst themselves, amongst the politicians. They made a mess of it, basically. So, at this stage, do you basically just either open slather and put at risk a lot of people? Do you isolate them somehow? Put them all into hotels, these people that are high risk, and allow everyone else to go back to work? That's an option. Because pensioners, you could actually do home deliveries, so they wouldn't have to leave the home, so they wouldn't be at risk at all. And you could allow for herd immunity, and then for stuff like that. So there's a lot of different things that they could have done or could still do, but problem is it's really chaotic out there in the way they're actually dealing with this whole situation. Obviously keeping the curve down, flattened, is really important to not overwhelm the medical system. But at the same time, things could have been done a hell of a lot better. If you isolated old people in nursing homes, their homes provided free delivery from the state, and because they're not a productive component of the population, so they can be isolated in that regard. And people that are high risk could be and provided with funding to be able to stay at home, and then you could leave the majority of the population still to function within society. The other thing is you could basically give everyone zinc and basically the malaria drug. So they've got it. When they get symptoms, they take it, and only end up in hospital if they are one of the very few that it doesn't work on. So there are many other approaches that would be cheaper. It would cost a couple of $100 million, but it wouldn't cost billions. $10 a pop. So if you're actually looking at, I think what's the US 330 million, I think they are now. So even at $10 each, that's 3.3 billion. That's going to be still cheaper at 3.3 billion to give them those supplements than basically what's being forked out at the moment. So there's not creative thinking up there at the top, unfortunately. As I said, these people are basically, if you think they're basically that coordinated, remember, the rich, the elites basically want dumb fucks to basically, so they can control them easier. Smart people in government would basically mean that they couldn't control them very easily to get their way. So, these aren't intelligent people, and they're just basically reactive and, and just as scared as most others. So it's a fucking mess. I'm scared to cut up a whole cow. I want to try sheep. Yeah, a cow would be that'd be bloody it'd be a lot of work. Let's put it that way. I wouldn't do it. I'd do a sheep. I do basically you know goats, sheep, small piglets and stuff like that. But probably a small calf, yeah. But a large cow, God Almighty, that would be hard yakka. So yeah. Traditionally, you would have a lot of people gutting a big animal, like a whole tribe, a whole lot of people doing that. Even traditionally in Greece, basically, when animals were cut in the village, and you would basically have a number of people helping out and cutting different portions, like they'd cut large slabs and cut them and then hand them over to somebody who'd have a bench over there and then started cutting it into smaller pieces. You just can't physically, it'd be too exhausting to do. I mean, you go into a factory, they've got all the electric machines and the cutters. They can do it really easy, so yeah, I wouldn't really enjoy it. I don't have an issue with it, but I still wouldn't enjoy, trying to cut up a really big animal. They'd just be too hard, too much effort. Yeah, old Holden, mate. A 186. So Premier, or not a Premier, a 186. What was it called? I think it's just a standard Holden 186. That's what it was. I can't remember whether it was a Premier or not. It may have been a Premier, but I can't remember that far back. I know Dad had a sedan, which was also a Premier, but I can't remember for the life of me what type of 186 Holden it was. That's a long time ago. Yeah. We're talking about now, mate. Back in the early 70s, so it's a long time ago in that regard. I was basically, what was I then? 7 years old or 8 years old or something like that. I was quite a young whippersnipper at the time. So yeah, that was something new. I mean, if you do it with your dad, so yeah, they were really reliable, Zach. Yeah, you're right. They were bloody reliable vehicles. We hardly ever had a problem. We used to go all over Tasmania with that station wagon, because Dad, when he ceased being a Boilermaker welder, he basically opened up a small business, a corner shop. He actually built it years ago when he was a Boilermaker welder. So he tore the whole thing down and constructed it from scratch. But we never took on the business because, Dad, wanted to, build up. Once he built it, he wanted to build up a bit of money reserve, because he didn't like to have a lot of debt. So he wanted to pay off most of that, and then basically build up a bit of money to put aside, a bit of savings, so then he could basically buy stock. And then when we took it over, we weren't planning to take it over as early as we did. It's the guy that actually was renting it off us, Jimmy Georgopoulos. He basically, his family, had come down from Melbourne. They didn't want to basically work anymore in the corner shop. So basically they said, well, look, and they were really nice. They actually showed my dad and my mum how to run a business. And Jimmy Georgopoulos, he was a real, he was one of those top, really, great mentor. Sort of the best mentor you can have in small business. He knew the ropes and all that. And my parents did really well after that, because they learnt the ropes and they did their own innovations. My dad started making all these displays, beautiful displays with hanging fruit and all sorts of shit, in such a way where people, because back in the 70s, you went to supermarkets and we were very bland, and here's, outside these big windows with all this sort of stuff, and people were just mesmerized, looking at it, especially the old ladies. So we ran a good business. We had people lining up sometimes. And I can tell you, me and my sister worked on the cash register, and you had to calculate everything in your head. A lot of, so when you change and all that, and even now I go through the supermarket and I'm buying items, and by the time I get to the checkout, I already know what price it should be. I know. Crazy. But it teaches you really well to calculate things. I can pick up when they've made a mistake in the woolies sort of thing, and I can say that was that price, that was that price, that was that price. And they have to go and basically give it to me for free in some cases. So probably piece them off, but I don't care. So I got a benefit out of it, thanks to Dad. Okay, any other? Let's just look down here. Smoked horse sausages. Sounds good. Yeah, that bacon looks. Yeah, it's great. It's really nice smoked. It's really traditionally done. So yes, I've actually had bacon this week 3 times. I was going to over it, but I was going to have bacon this morning, but I ended up, and I said, "Oh, bugger it," because I basically I had some other beef that I'd cooked a larger piece, and I still had some, and I'm going, it's 2 days now. I better eat it. Had it in the fridge, so I didn't want to leave it for too long, otherwise it goes into the freezer. So I had to have that, even though I was thinking bacon in my head. Bad boy, Harry. Has anyone any good info on fluoride in tap water? Look, what I know about fluoride is that it does basically get into your thyroid, so not a good thing in that regard. So, but at the end of the day, if you consume, it's been proven in studies, if you consume more iodine, it will displace it. So, still got that damn sniffle today. So that's one way. I mean, like everything, sanitation, took out probably half the diseases on this planet, and so did all these other things that we did. But they do have their, overuse of antibiotics. Obviously we're able to fight syphilis. We're able to fight, all these really nasty killers like the bubonic plague and all that. We're able to close down all the actual, leprosy colonies with antibiotics. Because leprosy colonies was still, alive and kicking up until the 30s and 40s. All through that period, it was only. It's only been very recent that a lot of the leprosy colonies around the world have been closed down. People just don't realize that, how much sanitation, antibiotics, and vaccinations have actually transformed the world, where people can sit around and basically contemplate and actually talk nonsense and wank themselves silly about, the side effects and all that. And you go, okay, let's take this all away and let's go back to where we were before and see how many die and how much pain and misery you can create in a very short amount of time. It's nice to sit on your ivory fucking tower and lecture, but the reality is, yes, they do have negatives. So fluoride is negative for your thyroid. Not a good thing. And that's why I say hydrate yourself with fat rather than water as much as you can. But at the same time, if you up your iodine slightly, you can displace that and sort of improve your thyroid function. So that's one way of dealing with that issue. It's these things are not easy basically options. I would rather that, if governments are going to create new type of facilities, that they should use like UVC, like run the water through a UVC thing that kills off all the pathogens and all that sort of stuff without basically, adding these nasty chemicals, whether it's aluminium or whether it's fluoride. I would prefer that those things weren't in the water supply. Now, the only thing you can do is basically, as a person, is take the water, put it through a filtration system, get rid of the fluoride and all that. It takes a lot of the minerals out, and then get, minerals, like colloidal type minerals, that are coming from those sort of, what are they called? It's it's sort of it's an organic material similar to the stuff that you get that you'll get basically oil from and all this. It's sort of like a layer which is right at the top part, which actually has a lot of mineral density, and it's an organic thing. And you can actually get that and use that and put that back into the water, sort of to basically put some of the actual minerals back and the trace minerals. It's not none of this, or you can get trace mineral type supplements and put them into the water, which is another option. It's not a bloody easy solution. I'd rather the government basically, or the organisations that were mandated by law to basically use other methods. That would be a much better thing. But unfortunately, it's not going to happen for some time because most people are ignorant about these issues. And until you get more of the population more informed, only then will we see change and a push for change away from these things. Antibiotics should be banned from livestock completely. That's unacceptable. They should only be used limited for diseased animals and nothing else. Animals should not be in feedlots. They should be out in pastures. So I've definitely got strong beliefs on those fronts. And I think options when it comes to certain vaccinations, we should basically look at what is a real requirement and what isn't. Probably for the flu, for most people, if they use a zinc supplement and they use tonic water, they could probably get away from the flu as well. Like you can deal with the corona type viruses, you can deal with the flu the same way, so you don't really need to be vaccinated. And there's other things that you definitely need to be vaccinated because they will kill you. And if there are some side effects, we can find other options and all that. Our solutions are not perfect. Humans tend to mitigate one problem and create a new problem. These are not easy answers. People will give you a black and white is because they've got an extra grind or they're pushing an agenda or whatever. I'm not pushing anything. I'm just telling you how it's a difficult. Some things can be done differently and better. Obviously I would rather these and mitigate these things rather than basically go back to the bad old days of pestilence and disease that existed back then, which is way worse for all of us. Okay. How do the Greeks manage to cook the octopus so tender? You beat the living daylights out of it. You have to tenderize the actual meat, and my old man used to go, and get me to do it as well. And we used to literally hit it against like big stones and just whack it and whack it and whack it like mad. And we would take it in turns to basically tenderize the meat. And that's how, if it's a smaller one, you don't have to tenderize it as much, not much of an effort. I do know that they do have now in Greece devices where you can actually put the actual octopus in, and it circulates and actually bangs it around, and it tenderizes the actual meat. So yeah, that's basically it's a bit of hard yakka. Let's put it that way. But if you're going to get something nice and enjoy it, you've got to put a bit of effort into it sometimes. Yes, B. Key. Meat is nice in many ways. Let's put it that way. What's Kitty saying? What is your opinion on cold soaking for weight loss? In a cold but not ice tub of water. It works. It works. The longest I've actually done as like sitting under cold water is basically nearly 5 minutes. I didn't manage exactly 5 minutes, even though I say I did 5 minutes to my friends. I didn't actually manage exactly 5 minutes. I couldn't. I had to get out. But it really is hard in that regard. I have heard from some recent people saying that they've looked at research that as long as you basically can keep the temperature down at about 27 degrees, so it's it's cold, but not excessively cold, and you lie in it for much longer, it seems to have a better effect. So you just fill the tub with water, but you get it to a temperature like, in the 20s or whatever. It's still lower than your own body temperature internal, which is, which is in the 30s, 36, whatever. So, and that seems to have a similar benefit, but you just have to do it for a longer time. Well, you put on some nice music and just lie in the tub for quite a few hours. Maybe, probably not a couple of hours, but what I mean, maybe an hour, so, and get a similar effect. But I've heard that, but I haven't actually seen the actual study itself. So who knows? You'd have to try it for a month, see how you go, whether you see any benefit, and report back to us. Have fun. Bo's too gutless. Can only imagine canning all its stomachs. You'd fall asleep. It'd be like canning sheep. 1, 2, 3. I'm out. Key Seed Man. I'm aware, but K research on omega-3 supplements. Yep. Aldehydes, but I'm confused on what is safe. I wouldn't touch any absolute zero amount of omega-3 supplements. None whatsoever. Zero. Fish is to be eaten as fish. Eat it as fish. It's got their astaxanthin in its natural form, in its stable form, within those membranes and all that, which basically can refresh those fatty acids, and it's cheaper than buying supplements. And, at least when you get it from the actual animal itself, it's in proportion to the need. Supplements are always overloaded, too high, the dosage, unless you're basically dealing with, going on holidays like somebody asked me and literally poisoning themselves with seed oils, and how do I mitigate it? And I said, well, you can take vitamin E, low dose, and also an astaxanthin supplement, but it's not something that I would recommend. But the biggest thing is aldehydes. They rip the the lipid membranes, so they will do a lot of damage to your membranes of your cells and different tissue around the body that they actually come in contact. So they're very nasty aldehydes, and a lot of these supplements are just loaded at different portions, but still, it's not something you want to be doing. You don't need a lot of essential fatty acids. If you're eating animal foods, you're getting more than enough. These supplementations are too overloaded, excessive amounts. Yes, you could probably take a high amount of this and balance the ratios with your omega-6s that you're getting from seed oils, for the general population. But we don't do that. We don't need this sort of shit. Just get it from food. That's how, the only sort of stuff I usually recommend, as people know, when it comes to supplements, it's usually amino acids like, taurine, that it's got some utility for, for basically as an amino transporter. As I'm getting older, I'm less efficient. So I need a bit of that assistance, especially since my body's down regular, has less capacity to produce it. So yeah, stay away from that stuff. And in terms of, that you, I presume you don't really like fish, or from the way you've coined the question, you don't need a lot of essential fatty acids. From regular meat, you can get enough. You need actually more arachidonic acid than you need basically DHA. Because remember, DHA is you have less DHA than you have arachidonic acid in your brain. And then when it comes to all the other tissue, it's mainly arachidonic acid. That's what you need. It does all the repair, cellular repair, and everything else. So as long as you're getting animal forms that don't need conversion, the ratios are irrelevant. And as I say to people, show me the study where the ratios of arachidonic acid and DHA are important. There's none, and there never have been. So completely unimportant. And most longevity populations consume far more arachidonic acid than basically DHA. So even the Okinawans, they consume more arachidonic acid than DHA compared to the rest of the Japan, and they live longer than the rest of Japan. So as far as I'm concerned, it's all advertising. It's all shit. Humans were not meant to eat a lot of PUFA. They were just meant to eat a certain proportion. And, that is something around the 2 to 2.5% of your dietary needs. And if you eat regular meat, you eat eggs, you eat basically some fish now and then, you will get more than enough. So, yeah, it's all crap. It's because people have been overloading up on PUFA from seed oils, which doctors then started recommending to mitigate that. They recommended, and all they did was they balanced out the essential fatty acids, but they put so much PUFA, highly rancid PUFA, into the actual diet that basically made more people susceptible to oxidative stress. It's not a good idea. Yes, I sort of started from before the digital era in cartography, sort of in that transitional point between the old school and the new school. And I can tell you, the old school, they used to give you that sort of really, what are these guys doing? So we were like the black sheep of the cartography field. But eventually they migrated over doing the same stuff that we did. So, as I say, we were just more evolved. But I don't say it to their face because that would really piss them off. Most of those people now have retired, so it's not an issue. Old fish, just a comment. Let's try and get a few questions. Why do older people have so much trouble getting regular quality sleep? What's the science here? Do they lose their circadian rhythms and melatonin? Actually, the melatonin thing is the thing. What happens as you age? A lot of things. Look, not everybody ages at the same rate. That's a very important thing, a distinguishing thing. But generally nowadays, populations actually succumb to far more damage in their life compared to the past, and so they age much more. Let alone, you see these blue blocking glasses. I used to basically get, before these, probably 6.5 hours of sleep a night. And when I got these, it went back to 7 and 7.5, from 6 to 6.5. So, and sometimes even less. So blue light, does reduce your melatonin production. So all these sort of lights that we're, bombarding ourselves, and I have to have that light on tonight, which is unfortunate, but usually I turn it off and, reduce, but, it wouldn't be visible. I'd be in the dark. But the reality is that, blue light is a problem in terms of, I'm still getting some effect because it's still getting into my skin through melanopsin. I'm not completely covered. I don't have a red light, which I probably should, don't think in terms of the other type of red light, not that type. You're sort of near infrared type light, to basically, but usually I have these lights shut. It's only once in a blue moon now and then when I do these night streams. But generally speaking, it's really that we've degraded our redox potential. We've basically, we're in an environment that is very high in blue light, and so we have less melatonin, and we eat in times when there's no light around, so we fuck up our circadian rhythms in many ways, and this is what is actually causing a lot of trouble for people as they get older. Capacity to sleep, but even younger people are not sleeping long enough as well, because for the similar reasons, with circadian mismatches and stuff like that, and melatonin production. So it's really the blue light that's actually causing a lot of those problems, and eating in non-daylight. So if you're eating when the sun goes down, you shouldn't be eating. Simple as that. If you want good sleep, there's no other way around it. Because your own body starts reducing its capacity to basically digest. So what happens is, as you go through the night, you're basically trying to digest a whole lot of foods. There's a lot of acid in the stomach and a lot of, discomfort and a lot of, so it's not an enjoyable picture. You can't get deep sleep. And so you don't feel rested. So the next day you're stuffed, and then you do that over and over again every day. It all, cumulative damage and, and also you're using more, you're not consuming enough to support your redox potential, so like precursors, like shitloads of bacon to get vitamin niacin to basically support NAD+, so to support your redox potential, and you're hitting it with EMF, which is actually affecting your redox potential, blue light from light bulbs, screens, all this sort of stuff. It all mounts up in reducing your melatonin. And taking artificial melatonin will just will downregulate your own production. And then if you get it off then you're locked onto the supplement. If you get off the supplement, you really feel like crap until your natural levels come back up. Ultimately, red light therapy can help in that regard to basically reset, and eating within the sort of your 10 o'clock to 6 o'clock type thing frame. You shouldn't be really eating very late. At most, in summer when the sun's still up, you could probably go to 7 or 8 o'clock if you're going to go later to bed. But really, you shouldn't be eating very, outside light, regular light that you would get. If you're in the tropics, where, the sort of the equator, where closer to the equator is where humanity evolved, you have to think, and forget about, we know it was wintry, but you're basically we're not talking about how cold it was and what food supply was available, but we're talking about, in here, what light. So you got up in the morning, you prepare, your cortisol was high, your blood sugar went slightly up, your energy levels got up, and you're out looking for something to eat. And then by the time you found it and dragged it back or brought it back to the campsite, it was midday. So that's when you're having your first meal. And then you'd be eating on and off until later. And remember, we've got a pH of 1.5, so we've got a scavenger carnivore type digestive system when we treat it properly. And by the afternoon, you'd basically then relax, sit back, not do anything, just sit around the campfire, talk shit, as that near infrared light. And we did that for 3 million years. And then we wonder why now, since electrification, why we're in a mismatched situation, and we're having all these problems. Well, for these sort of things. So I'm going to do a video, and I have found some cheap sources where you can get actually light bulbs for these sort of things, which are cheaper. But currently they're out of stock, and I think because they can't get them in from China and stuff like that. So eventually I'll keep on looking at the site. It was just recently I came across it, and because a lot of this other stuff is expensive. And I don't like, saying to people, I say, well, this is the information, but go and find it yourself. But since I've found some stuff that is competitively priced, which is within the majority of people's budget, this stuff I can recommend, but they're out of stock. And so I will do something eventually in that regard once, production and things start going normal and we can get access to the stuff. Then I'll basically get the information out there and try and get people to get this sort of stuff and install these things in their homes, which are not prohibitively in price, because there's a lot of stuff out there, gimmicky stuff that people are selling, which is, thousands of dollars. Fucking hell, it's a ripoff. There are cheaper options. And so, once they become available, all the things now you can do is I've got cheap, these only cost a couple of bucks, really cheap. So, that's your only option. It's pretty hard in that regard, unfortunately. Yep. There's a link you will find. Somebody asked me that question, and what I'll do is I'll actually post the same answer that I gave that person at the end of this. So when I finish this, I will actually post all that information from which sites and the different brands and what you can, so, that's your best option. How can they try herd immunity if they don't know the full impact of the virus on the long-term health? Look, that's the problem. We don't, because it can have quite deleterious effects on lungs, which means that makes those people vulnerable for the future. As I said, there's no easy solutions to this sort of stuff. But the problem is that there are solutions that they're not actually investigating properly. There's a whole lot of doctors that basically have shown that these malaria drugs, together with zinc, if you combine them, and vitamin D, things like that, they really work, and they really mitigate and reduce the damage, the severe damage. So you could give that to the general population, isolate the others, and have policies for them. And as I said, it would cost, even for a population like the US, it would cost $3.3 billion to provide those supplements to every single human of the 330 million Americans. So it's not an expensive proposition, and you'd still isolate those people. So, if, for instance, they, like elderly and people like that, so if they got into trouble, then those people could go to the medical system without overwhelming the system. But they also had something to be able to try that. And if it didn't work within the second day or third day, they were just getting worse. For whatever reason, it wasn't working for them, which I'd find surprising, because I know that that the results have been really good amongst the doctors that have used this method around the world. So, they've literally, when they get in early, they've prevented these people from basically getting into, where they need to be on a respirator. But if they don't get in early, then, their system's been overwhelmed. And by that stage, it's really hard. They're already at that close stage to get onto a ventilator. And that's the problem. And then on top of that, what do? When they're in hospital, they pump them full of these, food types, nutrients, which are full of sugar. And sugar basically lowers your white blood cells. So you're actually undermining the immune system at a time, and it's just crazy, because the duty of care that is being applied without taking into consideration this specific features of this virus, and it's a mess. It's a real mess, and a lot of people don't know. I mean, I've spoken to people that I know in the medical system. As I've said before, I've got a cousin, I'm a good friend, and I actually bumped into my mate's wife. This was a couple of days ago, and she was coming back from the hospital, and so I had a bit of a chat with her and sort of filled her in on a few points that she wasn't aware of, especially with the respirators, and that they need to basically lower the pressure because there's too much damage being done to the lungs, and they need to increase the oxygen to try and get that amongst their own people. I don't know, because it's hard if you're just a nurse, try to tell a physician that you basically just look down as you're nothing, you're a nurse, you don't have a real opinion. So it depends on the doctors, but maybe if somebody tries it and has a bit of success, then it could help, and then have that moment where people go, shit, this is actually working, this is what we need to do, increase the oxygen, lower the pressure, and get better results for recovery. And if they have, because now if you go into these sort of, if you get on a ventilator, you basically guaranteed 83% to be dead. So, the odds of survival are low, unfortunately. I was reading more about rather disturbing information. ATM friend in Sweden. Yeah, I really don't know what's they've got. In some ways strict, in some ways it's completely open. I don't really know what they're doing over there. It's a mixed bag, but people are saying that in some areas around Stockholm and like in the south, the remote areas, it's less of a problem. But in the south, where there's bigger populations that are living very close because it's high density, in those high density areas, the disease rates are growing very rapidly in comparison. So I don't, but it's a lot of hearsay, some from the media, and I don't know how reliable it is. So I can't really, confirm anything. And no mention on how long any immunity would last. And that's true. Immunity does not last very long in that regard. So, when you're looking at immunity, it could be some months, it could be a year, depends on the person. But there have been cases where people have had immunity for much less time. It's a problem. It's a real problem because, how do you manage this? And this is why I'm saying we really dropped the game right from the beginning. And I think also governments around the world didn't pull up the drawbridge and close borders really rapidly and clamp down, and then basically try and investigate which was the best way to go. So yeah, it is a problem, immunity, because I've heard immunity down to 3 months. That's not, that's a problem if some people are down to 3 months. So yeah, it's a real hard one. Let's put it that way. On the other hand, at the end of the day, it's an airborne virus. Yep, look, it will spread. That's true. It's not as I said, there are no easy answers with this. The early, if you're proactive and they dealt with it at a very early stage, we wouldn't be where we are. But unfortunately, we are, and now there are no easy choices. Waked up early, couldn't resist to watch. Thanks, mate. Good for you. Yeah, you did wake up quite early for a young whippersnapper like yourself. How do I highlight names? Oops, it's just asking. Luke probably could help you with that. Let's try and get some. Luke can never resist watching me. And the actual tonic water over the tap water, it's just, if you've basically got symptoms and you need to take the tonic water and the zinc and the at that time, it's basically because tonic water doesn't have a lot of quinine, so a litre will give you 83. So if you have a litre, 2.5 litres, so 2 of those, you're basically, because you have to think about it in terms of glasses, and not everybody can consume that amount. So it's about 10 glasses, and most, it's about 10 glasses of water. That's a lot of water, so, and there are issues with electrolytes and stuff like that. So, if you take water, if you consume water on top of that, you're going to be basically getting into, hyponatremia, to sort of levels where, water toxicity, too much water and too much dilution of your basically your electrolytes. And that's the danger. You do not want, to dilute your electrolytes. So, that's why I'm saying, avoid water and consume water. I know I did promise, there's a bloody site. Where is it? Where do I have the link? I'll just show this. I'll put this up anyway. It's a basically a water intake calculator. So you can pick metric, imperial, whatever, So if we go for metric, well, I would just leave it on that, and we calculate for somebody, that height, that weight, and for that weight, and for basically go for 70 kilos, which is sort of the standard thing. What the sort of average in kilos. And let's say they do an hour workout or whatever, and then you go calculate. So these are the intakes, to go 30 minutes, or automatically this would, and I think this is based on, on a certain amount of workout, so some intensity. So if you're only walking, I would basically ignore that completely. I'd rather, stick to the lower part, which is basically, and that would be somebody. Now there is another site as well that has height and everything else. I've got it somewhere here, and what I'll do is I'll put it up, and I think that you should basically, these are high estimates. I think these are too high. I think it should only be, around, for a person, with that weight, I would say probably 8 glasses a day, which is basically, you're looking at about 2 liters in that regard. That's one thing that about diet. So it's about obesity and diet. It's one of Ivor's that he's actually put up. Go and see his latest, the COVID-19, that the actual, metabolic syndrome and all that. Seems, people are high, and as I've said before, I've pointed that out, that people with the highest level of blood pressure tend to have the biggest problems. So keep that in mind. Yeah, so it's nothing to do with deuterium in this case. It's all to do with pretty much that you don't want to dilute your bloodstream. You need to basically, because we don't want to put too much stress on your heart, because if you basically have too many fluids in your system, you're basically your heart rate will go up, and that could put a lot of strain on your heart. So if you're consuming tonic water, basically replace all water intake with tonic water. So that's what I'm saying. So any water that you would naturally consume, use tonic water in its place, which means basically when you're sick like that, you can't have coffee, you can't have tea, you can't have any of these things. Put them aside for another day. Focus on getting more quinine in. And what quinine does is it will basically, 1, protect your red blood cells from being damaged by the virus, and 2, so that was one thing, because Pim had that recent thing that she actually showed about how the virus actually affects the actual iron in the actual hemoglobin. Well, quinine also has a supporting role in that. So these malaria drugs, they can actually prevent this damaging effect to a certain degree. So, and basically if you can keep that down from the early stages, that's why, the immediate response is the most important response. So the moment you have symptoms, you drop all other water sources, you hit the tonic water, and I would put even a bit of salt in the tonic water to get a bit of salt in there, so you're not basically affecting your electrolytes as much. So you can probably push up, just slightly a bit, like the 2.5 liters, but I don't go any higher than that, because you're going to be diluting your blood too much. You're just you're displacing too many fluids too rapidly. So we just want to get enough tonic water through, and then basically have the, so you can deal with that part, and then you want to start chewing that zinc supplement and all that. Get the zinc in there into your respiratory tract, and then allow, that the quinine to turn that key on the cell and allow zinc to go in, because zinc has a positive ion. So it can't go in normally. So it needs to basically have that little switch, which switches it, allows such positive ions to go through, and those ions then will go through and they will prevent replication of the virus. So they will prevent the ability for the virus to replicate itself using the machinery, which is the transcription machinery, because that's what in the cell DNA unravels, does messenger RNA transcriptions. That's how all those proteins, those little nanomotors that I talk about, are created, and then they go around and do a whole lot of things. So we want to prevent that machinery being hijacked from the virus, so it has to suppress the ability of the replication machinery, and that's what zinc does. That's why it's not a good idea to basically be pushing shitloads of zinc. It's only to deal with this virus within the respiratory tract. That's why you take it in orally in this way. You don't take it as a tablet. You basically take it orally, and you get it through all those cells within your upper respiratory tract and lower respiratory tract. And that's where we want all that zinc and the quinine to go in order to basically do its job. And that's right, we have to nip it in the bud right at the beginning. That's the most important thing we can do. Oops. I just overshot. Sorry about that. Give me a sec. I'll come back. Back. Okay, when did I do my first ice bath? Had an old converted freezer. Oh, mate, God. You're adventurous, Zach. I'm too scared to do your freezing water. Yeah, freezing water, yeah. I'd stick to the, nearly 5 minutes, but I would actually stick to, the other sort of stuff. So I wouldn't, just long duration type sitting in cold water. I use 6 grams of citrulline malate. That's a bit too much. Why so much, mate? Yep, you would basically increase your nitric oxide quite a bit. Look, it does, don't go too high, because you got to be very careful with boosting too much nitric oxide, because it does have an effect on blood pressure. It can lower your blood pressure as well quite a bit. So you got to be, you have that sweet spot. I usually say take about 3 grams, maybe 4. If you're a big person, maybe, you can go up to 5 grams, but, don't really push the envelope, mate. Sort of temper it back, stick to about 4. If you're going to do that, you'll still get good results in terms of nitric oxide synthesis. And you'll get that sort of boost. It really gives you a good energy boost in that regard as well. But yeah, sort of, it also helps with a lot of things, with things like growth hormone. There's a lot of things that these things can help quite a bit, because remember, L-citrulline gets converted to arginine, and L-arginine is what gives you the nitric oxide boost and gives you a whole lot of other benefits. The difference is if you consume L-arginine, it'll go to the liver and get hijacked by the liver, and you won't get much benefit from it. But if you basically have it as L-citrulline, it'll get converted in the body and then into L-arginine, and you'll get it into more tissue and in the bloodstream as well. So you get far more benefit. That's why I sort of recommend citrulline malate as well. But, at maximum, stick to 5 grams. You'll still get a good boost. If you've got a way of actually checking your blood pressure, and it's not too low, I don't know how big you are, Zach. If you're a big bloke, really big bloke, maybe, you can handle that amount. I would not recommend to a woman who's small in stature, stuff like that, I would say, just stick to about no more than 2 or 3 grams, probably 2, and see how you feel. If you get lightheaded, I definitely wouldn't go any higher in that regards. And if you're taking blood pressure medication, anyone, small amounts, and then get the doctor to adjust your blood pressure tablets. Do not take risks, please. Was just reading about heat shock proteins. Yeah, very interesting. Exactly. I did a thing on the EMFs on 5G and stuff like that, and how they, this sort of oxidative stress doesn't happen at all. But as I said, it does still affect your redox potential. So that's the sort of way it affects us, zaps our energy, unfortunately. Only need to be 15 degrees low. Yeah. Than your body temperature. Yeah, that's right. I couldn't remember how much. Yeah, that's right. I agree. 15 degrees, and just lie in there for a bit longer. Thanks for that, Dominic. Appreciate it. To light topics, bulbs, lighting, to replace floors. I'll get some information in that regard. I'll have to do something, so to provide that info in that regard. Halogens are a bit of a problem as well. They've still, really, if you want the closest thing where you don't want too much blue light toxicity is probably the old incandescent lights, bulbs. They're probably the safest. They're not perfect, but they're probably the safest. But they consume a lot of energy as well. So, especially with power bills now, it's a problem. So it's cheaper to go for, for these sort of options. As I said, with a lot of these things, it's not easy. That's why I'm looking for cheaper options for people. These are very inexpensive, a couple of bucks, and you can get stuff for down to $2 or $1.50 or whatever. So really cheap and disposable, so you can get multiples, have them in a drawer. I've got for work a lot of disposable ones. If they bust or whatever, just throw them out and put the other one, next pair on. Or I sleep in them. I have done that as well. Been watching Sweden. Thought you were doing well. They seem to have it under control. What's going wrong there? Yeah, no idea. It's getting pretty bad in the south, I heard, but I haven't seen much statistics. It's just been a lot of people have been talking about it, but I haven't really looked into it. I've sort of focused on the US, Australia, New Zealand, this sort of area, and like Greece and all that. But yeah, when I do get a chance, I will check other countries. I haven't checked Russia. I haven't checked, what's happening in some of the other countries like Southeast Asia. I know a bit that Bali's a mess. And I've got people that I know in Indonesia that have informed me about the situation in Bali. It's my regular sort of holiday spot. But yeah, so I probably need to find out more about what's happening in Sweden at the moment. I've got very little information. Vitamin D is important. It has an important role to play. A hormone-like effect has an important role in sleep as well. That's true. Light. It's really the frequencies of UVA, because that basically has a big effect. Like in the mornings, that UVA frequency is what is actually setting your whole, increasing, has a cortisol effect, has all these other effects, and the blue light, as it moves from the near infrared to blue, it basically has this waking up effect, more active, more energetic, suppresses basically melatonin, and allows you to basically be energetic throughout the whole day. And then as you get into later in the day when the sun is, starting to recede, you switch to the near infrared sort of frequencies. And and the UVA, there's more UVA than UVB by that time, like in the morning. It's only the midday where it's different. And at that stage, that has a signaling on your melanopsin to start ramping up melatonin, to be able to sleep and all that. So it's more has to do, like there's a role there for vitamin D, but the most important role is this melanopsin signaling that actually happens. That's why you have to get out in the daytime. You can't just sit at home inside your home. I get out in the mornings, then in the middle of the day, even when I'm working, I get out, then I start working, then I get out in the midday and walk around, and then I basically get out at night as well as the sun's going down. And I'm basically resetting things. The body's actually picking up these frequencies and actually resetting my melanopsin is picking up that and going, okay, we're moving into this night part, increase melatonin. And that's what it does. It's all this signaling from our environment that's actually happening. So, very important, light. I know it's one of those things that I've promised to do, but eventually I will do a series on light, magnetism, and water and those sort of things, and deuterium. But yes, they take a lot of time to basically put together. At some point I will do them. I was supposed to go on holidays this year and do them then. That was my plan. Go to Southeast Asia, go on holidays, and in my free time do the damn things. Put it all together, the slides and everything. I probably will in winter, probably, even if I'm not going to be traveling, because it's going to be really hard to travel. I don't know whether out of the country it'll be impossible, I suspect. But my mates, a couple of my mates said, look, why don't we go up to Queensland if we're allowed to? So we may go to the Gold Coast, so that's another option. So if that happens, then I'll do stuff from there, and then eventually we'll have these sort of series, and I'll put it all together in that regard. Yeah, it's good for the evening. It's red light therapy is really, really good. Any thoughts on lemons and berries? Berries are a waste of time, completely a waste of money, no benefit whatsoever. There's some nutrition, but there's no real benefit. For the bang for your bucks, liver is far more nutrient dense. And most of the vitamin C, especially with the supermarket type stuff, is lost because of refrigeration and long duration between. Fresh seasonal probably has more vitamin C, but that's competing with the sugar anyway. So you can get more from animal products anyway. Lemons are probably a better option, as long as you're not eating the flesh of the lemon, just the juice. You will, because there is some oxalate, but it's very little. It doesn't have a lot of oxalate. It's very little. And lemons naturally break down oxalate anyway, the citric sort of nature of it. And at the same time, it's a good source of vitamin C without any competition at the receptor. So, if you're concerned, and I'm not concerned, but if you're concerned, you could take lemon. I've got less. I'm not ideologically blinkered in that regard. But is it necessary? Probably not. I don't know all your diet, so I usually say to vegans or vegetarians or omnivores, have some lemon on an empty stomach with nothing else. When you get up in the morning, warm lemon juice, have that, so you can get basically your vitamin C for the day, because you're not going to get it from your diet. Simple as that. So, that's a solution that I provide for them as a biohack for the omnivores to the vegans. But generally speaking, we carnivores don't need that shit in that regard. I mean, I do like lemons. I have to be honest. I love lemons. I can actually eat through a lemon like that. I've got, I really like lemons, and and occasionally I do spoil myself and have lemons as well. And I definitely put them on my steaks. I put lemon juice on my steaks and all that because I like the taste. And if somebody wants to come and get my carnivore card, they're more than welcome, and they can stick it where the sun doesn't shine, because I don't give a shit. But in that regard, look, lemons are fine if you as some sort of seasoning. Give meat flavor. Yep, and you get a bit of vitamin C as well, because you've got no sugar there competing. So bang for your buck. That means you less have to worry about other sources of vitamin C. Notice Jack always says that light on the skin is very influential. Melanopsin, that is. Yep, the melanopsin receptors in the biggest concentration is in your actual eyes in terms of melanopsin, but there is on your skin, in your gut lining as well. So, it is picking up frequencies of light. And basically, there's all that circadian rhythm type stuff. And that's where the important thing is. But where I disagree with Jack Cruz, and so does Bart, we both, I sort of in more in agreement with Bart on this. I have some differences, even with Bart, on some issues, but on this one, I disagree with Jack, and I agree with Bart that basically diet out trumps, light in that regard. But light is important, but it's still, in terms of sleep and repair and all that, it's important. But if you're having a shit diet, you can have the greatest, light interaction. You're still going to be very sick. And if you take a look at people in Southeast Asia that are eating a lot of sugar nowadays because it's cheap, light isn't helping them at all, because he usually says go to sort of those sort of areas, you're going to be much healthier. Not if you're overwhelming your system. You're undermining the redox potential. You're having high deuterium foods. You're overwhelming your body with too much of this stuff. You can't deuterium deplete. Deuterium depletion is very important as well for your nanomotors. Okay, let's say you've got the light and you're fixing up your redox potential on at one level. If your nanomotors are fucked, how's that going to work? How are you going to get your ATP synthase if you're fucking up your nanomotors? All you're going to do is just clog up everything else. If you were to, let's say I was to add a whole lot of niacin in there and then a whole lot of seed oils at the same time, as an example, I'm just giving this as an example, your nanomotors are fucked. You're putting all this extra capacity, redox capacity in there, but it can't be utilized. So, it's a complex, as Luke would say, it's a complex tapestry of a number of biochemical processes, and light, magnetism, and water, and all these sort of things play a role. So I sometimes laugh because people jump on the deuterium bandwagon, or jump on the light bandwagon, or jump on the dietary bandwagon. All these things are important. Diet out trumps everything, but only by a small margin. That's where I'm sort of probably in the middle between Bart and Jack in that regard. So, where I agree with the food side being more important with for instance, with Bart, I probably come a bit further closer to Jack in terms of light. But, so it's different way of, I sort of see all these elements playing a role that, if you're in that sweet spot of 120 parts per million in terms of deuterium, very important for that efficiency. If you've got enough redox potential to basically be able to get that energy through and work properly, if you've basically got the right nutrition. So it's all these things coming together that basically give you a healthier, better working, functioning body. And that's the way I sort of see it. People have this sort of like a tunnel vision. It's all food, or it's all light, or it's all deuterium and all that. And that's just too narrow. It's because they're so involved and have got, you could say, a lot of time invested in those things, that they basically, overemphasize, in a sense, these things. But it doesn't really help people when you're overseeing. You have to be balanced and look at all these biological pathways and how they work and interact with each other, and the importance of all these elements of food, light, magnetism, water, deuterium, all these, how they work synergistically together in the right way to get better health and better longevity and stuff like that. And we can look at traditional populations, the sort of things that they ate that have an effect on these different things, or the practices, the way they lived, or the way they actually, went earlier to bed, or, stopped eating after a certain time, or restricted their feeding time, or ate up to 80%. All these, practices, that traditions that people have done, things that we've lost, had certain biological consequences to their bodies, which allowed them to live longer lives, if it wasn't cut short by, a virus or bacteria or whatever else, So it's, unfortunately, we've lost that tradition, and we tend to sort of jump on our own little bandwagon, which is what normally happens. Yes. Okay, my friends, colleagues have been dismayed, expressed her observation and progress in similar HOA and some other scientific evidence emerging. Don't know. So what is Luke saying? Fasting still. It's good to fast in that regard. So let me just, there was one thing that I did. If I can find it for a sec. Not that. I did. This is the one. I forgot. I just remembered this. I did put it up. This is a really good site in terms of niacin. So, to get some information on the amount, the sort of food sources like the chicken breasts, pork, meat, the quantities and stuff like that. As you can see, these other things don't have a lot, and forget the bioavailability in that regard. And so, as you can see, the majority are animal products, and the other sort of stuff is questionable in terms of bioavailability. So I would basically ignore that. But I forgot to actually mention this. So that's pretty good site. It shows you actually the images of the different foods, and also down here, where is it? Let me just find it. Because a lot of sites, it's really hard to find these sort of things in the quantities and all that, so you can actually mix and match things. So, okay. So if we want to basically look at, here it is. So foods by nutrient ranking. Let me just increase the size of that, just so. Okay. So in terms of food ranking, and it's basically myfooddata.com. And so if we look at the sort of specific niacin, then we can actually pick the groups as well. So we can go and say meats or fish or whatever. Highest, we can put it to 100 grams. So we can actually look at the specific the common sort of stuff. There's standard sort of stuff. There's a whole lot. You can actually look at different sort of data sets. So, for instance, fried liver, so 100 grams, which is about 4 ounces. So basically, you're getting about a bit over 100%. You're looking at chicken breasts. Chicken breast is pretty good, For instance, you can get quite a bit of niacin in that, better than turkey. So you can literally go for probably 120 grams or whatever of chicken breast and get 100% of your niacin. And you can go double that. You can actually see you don't really need to supplement to improve your redox potential. There's other stuff like bacon, like for instance, 65%. So you can basically get, let's say you have 100, 150 grams of, bacon fried. There you got your 100% for the day, let alone other foods that you probably consume as well. So, steak, for instance, in that regard, or deer tenderloin. So roasted beef eye of round roast, that's 53%. So if you have 200 grams, which is basically 8 ounces, you've got basically your daily requirements. And so it's very, very easy for us carnivores to get to support our redox potential in that regard. So, in that regard is, yeah, a good site to use anyway. So because I did forget it before, I just remembered it. I wanted to make sure you guys had it in that regard. Yeah, I'm not going to get into controversy of another virus of any at this stage. I'll stick to the current one. I've been battered enough in regards to the current virus. No offense. I think even that is a science. It's a very complex virus to basically get. There's a number of viruses out there that like Ebola, we still don't have a cure. There are a number of very complex viruses to basically get a cure for. We just manage them in that sense, or we basically just notice people dying and isolate them so no more people can die. Yeah, they're very controversial stuff, and I don't really, this is a sort of, we don't want to get into. It's been enough carnage in the carnivore community over corona, so and I know there's all these other viruses that are very controversial as well on a whole lot of fronts. So yeah, I've sort of had enough. I've been battered enough with these sort of things as they are. This is a current one that's out there. I'll fight one war after another. I won't get into too many. Now, let's just find a few others. I've no belief in the vaccine. Never pin hope on something that doesn't exist. Yeah, neither do I. Because, how can I put it? The problem is the current stuff that they're actually investigating, like the Japanese one, has a really bad effect on reproduction. And a lot of them that they're actually investigating at the moment, they'll just take too bloody long, about 2 years before we see anything that actually is safe, So, you can say, well, if you're in a high-risk group, you're not in a reproductive age, you're in your 70, 80-year-old or whatever, do I take that vaccine to protect myself? That's a hard, at this stage, I would say no. Maybe in a year's time when there's a bit more supporting evidence that, there's a bit of, we've got something and we've done a bit of work. There doesn't seem to be any toxicity in other animals. And then, yeah, that would be a safe option. I think they're using in Australia hamsters, which have got very similar sort of immune type with us. And, if it works on the hamster, fine, But at this stage, I'm lukewarm, if not very cold about it. And I think I'll stick to my quinine. I'll stick to my zinc just to be safe. I don't want to push the envelope in any other regards because just too risky, to say the least. Yeah, look, we don't really have anything substantial we can put our hat on and say, this stuff is going to work. We're still we're still basically uncertain. It's just too hard. And at the moment, a lot of the options that they're giving us, the vaccine options that potentially, I wouldn't touch the Japanese one with a barge pole. It's got too many side effects, too many issues. Some of the others look a bit more promising, but and some medication options, like they're trying to find the active ingredient of what is it called? There's a one, with a lice, sort of where you can't consume it because it'll kill you. But if they can find the active component in that kills the virus, that may be an option. So maybe more like, like you knock off malaria by taking malaria drugs. It doesn't give you an immunity, but it just kills it off when you have malaria. So that type of option may emerge. So we don't really know what's going to emerge at this stage. We're still in the dark. And I'm not that confident. Let's put it that way. I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong. In 3 months' time, they could have something on the shelves. I could be completely and utterly wrong about this. But currently, from all the stuff that I've looked at, I'm not that confident that we will have something. So I'm going to stick to my zinc, my quinine, my vitamin D for winter, and that's all I can do, and try and distance myself as much as possible to reduce, how often I end up with it potentially, especially if you don't get immunity for a very long time. I don't know. Maybe I get a longer immunity than compared to other people. Your level of how can I put it? What was it? Your level of health, how healthy you are, you'll get from what the data is actually talking about. People that are healthier seem to get a longer immunity than people that are less healthy. And it has to do with in what state their immune system is. So I think, we carnivores or people, I did a reset of my immune system, by doing a 3.5 day fasting. So I'm probably in a better position, or, people that do intermittent fasting and stuff like that are probably in better position in terms of the performance of our immune system to protect ourselves against, and give us, more immunity for a longer period of time. But at the same time, we still know very little of whether certain genetics are more vulnerable than others. There's no research. I've been scouring because I've got that coronavirus type susceptibility, and I've been scouring the internet trying to find stuff that, where people that have this same genetic SNP are more vulnerable or not, to know, whether I'm more vulnerable or not, or people like me, which is a very big sizable percentage of the population. So yeah, there's a lot of question mark, and I've got shitloads of question marks as well. I'm continually trying to find out new information. If I find it, I'll let you know. It's all I can say. Yep. What was this? Bo saying yes, but the staff meeting was frantic with the hospital director not wanting to even consider the possibility. My friend has made the same observations. Not just any virus. Yeah, look, it isn't any virus. This virus seems to really attack not only the lungs, but also your red blood cells. It is a nasty piece of work. It's probably not as lethal as, things like MERS or Ebola, that really does a job not only on your red blood cells, on your organs. It attacks multiple pathways and multiple things. But, it's a pretty nasty, virus. But hard to know. Oops. Damn, I just overshot. Oh, God, I just lost my spot. Sorry about this, guys. Oops, found it. Got to get salt in there. Look, if you don't like it in your water, just put more salt on your food. So you got to get, especially, yeah, don't go crazy on the tonic water. It's sort of a balance. Try and get more salt in there. There's a problem with tonic water. It's too readily combined with gin. And now I have to resupply. Yes. I honestly don't know what the tonic water is and that mineral water. No, it's different. It's not tonic water is a different thing to mineral water. I think there are some tonic waters that do have mineral water in them or combine it, but we just want plain old sugar-free tonic water. Just the regular sort of stuff because they do make sugar stuff. They put things, so you don't really want that sort of stuff in there in that regard. Okay, lambs. There has to be a way to harvest quinine from tonic. Look, if you come up with an idea, send me an email. Yes, I don't really know how to extract it, so you can actually get more concentrated. This is why the biggest problem is trying to get the actual like the malaria drugs. I'm in a sense, I should have, in the early days, I really regret it. I should have gone to my doctor and said, look, I'm going to Southeast Asia. Can you basically give me a prescription for malaria drugs? I would have had them now, But now if I go, because they know that you can't get overseas, they'll say, I know what you wanted, and that's not part of the script. So, it's not in their tick list, and they just won't give it to you, which is a bugger. In that regard. So, and you can't sell, if you send drugs through the actual mail as well, unless you get a friend in a place to basically send it to you in that regard. And they can get access in some country. Yeah, it's not an easy thing in that regard. Luke's soda enthusiast. Hey, you need to basically do an image with soda drinking. Give you an idea, So with in one hand a zinc supplement and another hand there. I got you thinking. What's supposing? I'm expecting to be sent some more actual scientific papers this week. In hope Pim can and will translate them in her channel. Good. Look forward to seeing Pim do some additional stuff on that. I've got a few things that I want to send Pim as well. I'm sort of focused more on at the moment. I've looked at those early studies and all that. I'm sort of more focused now in trying to give people solutions and just bring them up to that sort of line rather than looking at a lot of studies at the moment. I'm looking at some, but I'm not. I have to be honest. I'm not overly looking at that. I'm sort of focused on more trying to get some of this information in terms of best sourcing for things and do a proper thing. I probably need to do a vid. I've been looking at some supermarket sites around the world in different countries, trying to actually put something together of where you can source some of these things and trying to find. And the biggest problem is I can't find a site. There are, in some countries, you can find the quantity of quinine in some of the stuff, but not in everything. And And so I'm still trying to do a bit of research on that site to get that information, so then I can put it together and say, okay, buy this brand, don't buy that brand, which brands are best to buy to get more of the quinine, so you don't have to, try and do these experiments of evaporating and whatever else, because I don't think those things work anyway, in that regard. You're welcome, mate. Dr. Gominak, this is the guy on the vitamin D's that you were talking about. I think, yep. Or hold on, no, that's right, the corona thing. Maybe I can't remember the names now because I've seen so many doctors and all that. But yep, if you say so. I'm trying to remember them in that regard. Shit happens, doesn't it? So you're escaping fast out of there, out of the UK, to leave your laptop behind. Okay. The polyphenol stuff, like resveratrol, does liver have? Look, a lot of, it's, you won't find in liver. You'll find it in things like the certain grapes and and stuff like that. Where it's the biggest problem with resveratrol. It sort of has a mixed, in some regards it seems to have some benefits. In some regards, it doesn't. So it's a mixed bag, and I used to basically consume it myself, but since looking at it, it's I wouldn't sort of recommend. And I've spoken before about it, and generally about polyphenols. They do have certain, over. When you're pushing up hormesis too high, I think we're getting enough hormesis as it is in our environment. And you can actually push up with fasting and exercise. You can push up your sirtuins without really requiring resveratrol. I have said in the past that if somebody's on a high carbohydrate diet, there's good studies that actually show in rats, not in humans, only in rats. If you want to treat yourself as a rat, fine. That basically they can reduce the oxidative stress of a high carbohydrate diet. But can it be applied to humans? The longevity stuff that people talk about with sirtuins and resveratrol, especially with resveratrol, it's mixed. It seems to, if you're on a high sugar diet, it seems to have more benefits. When you're on a low sugar diet, it seems to have some negatives as well. So, I wouldn't recommend it unless some of your family members are sugarholics, and maybe it'll give them a bit of benefit because they will not increase their sirtuins on their diet. But if you're on a low carb diet, a carnivore diet, a keto diet, you do some exercise and stuff like that, you will upregulate those sort of pathways, those longevity pathways. So you don't really need to basically fork out a whole lot of money for a supplement. But if you're on a high carb diet that, suppresses the sirtuin pathways, this artificial way is sort of beneficial. But then again, these are short-term studies, so we don't know what the long-term effects is in pushing certain pathways up while other machinery is pushing the pathway in the different direction. Could this create other imbalances or other pathology that we don't know of? So that's one reason why I've walked away from resveratrol. And I just say to people that are really doing shit diet, maybe you should consider it. It may be helpful in the short run, but yeah, I prefer nowadays to naturally push those pathways in the right direction rather than sort of artificially trying to force the body to do things which it normally won't do or doesn't want to do. You may get like a reduction in oxidative stress, but at the same time, you may get other pathways that are affected. And it seems like resveratrol does have some negative effects on some other pathways. But the problem is there's no human studies, that really good quality human studies. So, randomized control or stuff like that. These are sort of limited ones which are done by industry. And, there's all these question marks, and you don't really need at all this sort of crap. You're only creating hormesis. So exercise, fasting, take a cold shower, have a cold shower, especially if you're too horny. But you don't need to fork out a whole lot of shitload of money. And I just noticed Richard there. Yep. Very right, Richard. You don't need that shit. So you could recommend it to your carb eating sort of relatives, but no, you don't really need to do that. Key, obviously, kind of overdo soda lately. Aside, high deuterium, high fructose, corn syrup, wash. There I wouldn't, soda is definitely bad for you in terms of fructose, in terms of high deuterium, in terms of all these deleterious effects, high fructose corn syrups and stuff like that. Sort of soda water, if you can, some people consume soda water in that regard, which has got, no calories, no, it's just plain old soda water. That's probably less of a problem. But do you need it? Probably not. I don't waste my time. And yeah, I know. Yep. I know this. Did you get a lot of scratching? You never do it on an empty stomach. I always have it with food if I'm going to have niacin. Because otherwise, it's getting through the body. That's one thing. It's actually penetrating the entire body and getting everywhere. That's one good thing about niacin. Very highly bioavailable to all tissue around the place. So it just basically it seems the skin sort of, the reason why it reacts like that is because it has a threshold. You hit the threshold and it sort of goes, too much, and it sort of has this reaction. But at least it's getting everywhere. So it's getting in every single nook and cranny. It's getting into all those mitochondria to improve their redox potential. So that's a definite. But I wouldn't take high doses. It causes other problems and imbalances. That's why I always say I usually get the 250 milligram ones and I bust them into half, and I have half at part of the week, and then the other half a couple of days later in the week, and that's how I do it. So in that regard, so I end up getting 250 but I don't go to high these mega dosing sort of 1,000 milligrams, just too high. You definitely don't want to overload your basically NAD plus. There's a threshold there, there's a sweet spot. Too much is too much for the system, so, and a lot of people take too much, and I think long term there are some deleterious side effects, so not a good idea. It's like anything, it's not a good idea for a lot of things. I've heard that before. I'm not convinced aside of evolutionary arguments. I've yet to hear any polyphenols ought to be useful. Yep. Yeah, there's really nothing. I mean, as I said, these sort of things, plants were used by humans, like hunters and gatherers and stuff like that, were used for medicine. They've got their role as medicine. And that's precisely it, Richard. Not useless, just not essential, and that is right. They got their place. Plants, compounds can actually have a hormetic effect. Most drugs have a hormetic effect or push certain pathways, you know, but you don't want to be doing that continuously. You want to do it at a certain time when you want to increase glutathione in your system. And that's what it does, really. It basically pushes up glutathione. When you basically, it's like, any plant toxin that you take of these sorts will push up glutathione to a certain extent. But, it's again, this artificial way of doing it. Yes, if you're sick and you want to push that up a bit by creating that hormetic effect, it can have a benefit, a short-term benefit, but long-term doing this continuously poisoning the system, it's like giving yourself low doses of some poison. This continuously is not a good idea. You don't want to be stressing the body continuously, because that's what hormesis does. It's a continuous stress on the body, and a body has to respond. Is that a good idea? No fucking way. Spot on, Richard. It's just another way for people to basically sell crap, That's all they want to do. It's the dollars. It's the dollars. Those damn dollars. And I've lost my spot. Yep. Richard said something there as well. Stresses like polyphenols. Yep. That's exactly it. Yep. That's the anti-lice thing. Yep. But we don't. You definitely wouldn't take it to kill you. But we don't know what the active component in that regard. So, what would help? Okay, regression of leptin resistance. What else would 3 days of fasting reset? Your immune system. So, definitely would. But, leptin, insulin resistance, those sort of things. Sometimes those things, it depends how severe it is. Remember that guy, Richard, that spoke to Pim about hysteresis, insulin hysteresis, where even though these people basically do this fasting, get on a good on a good diet, it doesn't go back to base level. It sort of seems to sit slightly above leptin, the level of leptin resistance. Because remember, the more insulin you've got, insulin drives leptin resistance. So if it hasn't come down completely, you're not going to be getting it to a more normal level. So it can actually take longer in that regard. So, some things can be dealt with quicker. Some things can take a hell of a lot longer. And what's Richard's name? Because exercise, sunlight, cold and hot and cold work just as well. Yep. That's right. These are all sort of hermetic stresses and stuff like that, and have benefits, and have far more better benefits, because they're natural. It's things that the body expects, in that regard. And precisely, Luke, we have enough stresses. We don't need to actually waste our money buying more stress, because that's what we're doing. We're actually throwing away good dollars to buy more stress. Not a good idea. Very foolish as well. Hello, good to see you. Damn, it's early. I thought you were on a farm. I thought you got up at 5 o'clock in the morning. What sort of farmer are you? You got a couple of your fans here. Okay. Oh, okay. You were watching last night's stuff. Fair enough. Yes, plenty there. I tell really nice stories. Should actually put. Hold on. We will we will put that up. Okay, let me just find it. Oops. I actually emailed it to Bart as well, and he's still laughing about it. He loved it as well. StreamYard just decided to basically kick me out. Wonderful. God. Now it's got the other. Why haven't they gone away? This is what drives me up the wall. That is damn funny. Hold on, let me just find that spot so I can actually turn it off. Oops, there it is. There's Mick the crackpot. Juicing. Could be worse. Oh, thanks, Luke. I have to say, I really enjoyed that one. Oops, oops, oops. Fat chance of getting sleep anytime. Yeah, that was pretty epic, that one. That one of me. Nanomotors, mate. Nanomotors. And Richard Tapestry. My rich tapestry, mate. Thanks, mate. Appreciate it. Yeah, Shell pretty much will get up very early. I do appreciate it, and thank you, all of you guys. You're a lot of fun. Sort of things really went when I tried to share. You know, it's the unfortunate thing with Streamlabs nowadays, they're not as stable as they used to be back in the good old days. Because there's a lot of internet traffic, and we're getting a lot of problems and all that. Yeah, he was missing in action because I went because I think he works, and he said he was going to get back home. He wasn't sure about what time he was going to get back and what time he would be available. So yeah, fell through. Next week, he'll be back. Just couldn't make it this one. Yeah, definitely is good. Definitely is a masterpiece. I just said the skin needed a bit more orange on it. But then again, I've looked at it and I'm gone, You know, I still have to say I do enjoy it. Get some really good laughs out of it in that regard. Yeah, I think it's a really good one. Luke, I have, I know, because I usually don't do these sort of things, going after and pulling these people apart, because it just doesn't interest me that much. But we get a good laughs and all that. I have sent it on to Bart. He'll probably use it in one of his next, things when it comes to Mick the Crackpot vegan. So that will be funny, to get out there, and he has a bigger following, so he'll get more value out of it. So yes, that'll be fun. Oops, give that up. I completed my soda bread experiment. I don't have the exact same outcomes as a trial shown by Dr. Mason. More fibre, more traffic jams. Only problem is everyone wants more of it. Look, like anything, there's there are going to be variations. Sort of results that some people get and all that when you do these sort of experiments. And you can actually see it even with the, sort of, because there are genetics, genetics play a big role, and me, I've always pushed the idea of how genetics, play a big role in terms of the certain ways, or the way you can actually, a genomics approach to carnivory, which I've sort of promoted quite a bit. Nobody else sort of focuses on that, but there are these variations, and so different macros and micros can have different sort of responses in different people. So, but I do it, for my people. I don't go out there arguing with others, because you get into a lot of silly arguments, and they end up nowhere. It's only the things that people are aware of, like the ApoE gene, that side of things. They sort of, and a lot of people don't even realize that the ApoE receptor is on the HDL. So there's a lot of a lot of importance of HDL in this whole ApoE sort of nexus. But a lot of people know about basically the general gist of these sort of things, the certain lipid profile and the certain LDL 1, 2, and 3, and then the other ones and things like that. Those sort of things, the big fluffy ones and the small, dense ones and things like that. Most people know those regular things, but when you're looking at sort of these other types of experiments, which and even those, there is a genetic component as well. It's not only merely diet, in a sense. It's like the hyper responders with LDL. The sort of levels that you end up getting also vary. So it's, but I don't get into arguments with people, because it's a waste of time, I find, in that regard. Not yet. I'm not actually. I was going to go until about around about this time I was going to go, and then maybe push it another half hour in that regard. If a person couldn't get meat because of food shortages, what are the least harmful food options over the long run? Supplements, protein supplements. So if you can get, you can order. I've actually got protein as a protein supplement. So and so I've basically got a lot of that sort of stuff. If you basically can, before this happens, get a whole lot of fat offcuts from a butcher or whatever at this stage, before any food shortage, and just fill up your deep fridge, so you've got a whole lot of fat soluble, the fat soluble vitamins, the actual fat, the animal fat itself, and then you can combine that, with protein powders, and then some of the, like the B vitamins in that regard that you would not get in that, probably vitamin C as well, a low dose. You don't want high dose, you'll end up with a lot of oxalate otherwise, and so if you're really desperate, that's a sort of way. So you've got enough protein, you've got enough of the fat soluble vitamins, and then you've got enough, because I wouldn't actually get man-made fat soluble vitamins. They can be a real big fucking problem. Probably the only one that you could say is relatively safe is these your vitamin D coming from with an olive oil base, or a vitamin D that is basically liposomal based. That's the sort of stuff. Let me just find. Let me just, not that. Okay, so where is it? So if you're looking at basically something like this, for instance, which is Aurora Nutrascience, they make a liposomal form, which is basically if you've got digestive issues, you've got issues where you can't absorb, malabsorption issues or whatever, liposomal is probably the best way to go. They also have a vitamin C, but it's quite high, and I usually actually say to the vegans or omnivores or people like that have issues with absorption because of over competition, I usually say, well, get in a liposomal form to deal with your issues. We carnivores have less of an issue of that sort. And there's also the Jarrow one, which is that is olive oil based. So as you can see, extra virgin olive oil. So it doesn't have, because a lot of the others have got the seed oils, like sunflower oil and that sort of stuff. You don't want that shit, poofer oils at all. You don't want oxidative products. So the safest way for a general one, because it's quite well priced, in that regard. If you want a dose which is like, they do have different types of dosages. So if you want for younger kids, 1,000 IUs, you want sort of, a lower dose, you can take that. You want a high dose for the time of corona to deal with that, you can go for this option. And I would look at those sort of things in terms of supplementation. They're relatively cheap. They're also much safer in that regard. The liposomal one is 25 nanometers, which is quite small. So it'll actually get through the blood-brain barrier. It'll actually get everywhere in the body. And also it is small enough to do the job, where anything above, usually they say anything above 150 is useless. Anything about over 100, I think, is not that great. Anything below 80 is better. Anything 50 or below, in my book, is what you really want for best absorption. This is 25, and I've actually checked with the company. And I have no relationship with the company anyway, so in that regard. But that's only for malabsorption issues. If you've got malabsorption issues, everybody else should look at just a Jarrow. It's cheaper. That's what you should be getting. So this is the sort of stuff that I've got in my kit, in my toolkit for those sort of when I need it. Because as we get into winter, my vitamin D levels will decline, and that's why these people in spring in the Northern Hemisphere, they're at the lowest of their vitamin D levels, and that is why they had more issues. So these are not optimal things at all, Richard. There's supplements, powders, and stuff like that are much higher in deuterium. They're not optimal, but as a short-term solution to a food shortage, you can get far more protein into your body through protein shakes, you know, multivitamin, some meat offcuts and butter in particular. So if you want fat soluble vitamins, the cheapest way is butter. Just store a shitload of butter in your fridge is another way of doing it, because it's always hard to get offcuts. So I've got shitloads of butter in my fridge. So basically, what you do is you'd create a smoothie where you'd put butter, so you get all the fat soluble vitamins. You basically put the powder in. You basically get electrolyte stuff, trace minerals, stuff like that, and basically your B vitamins, which is another important factor. So you can actually get just B vitamin complex to in that regard, and so that will basically cover you in that regard. Remember, a lot of fat soluble vitamins get stored in the body, so you need the extra cholesterol and stuff like that. And that's why basically, and eggs don't last as long. And so, with dairy products, most dairy products also don't last that long, including cheeses. Some cheeses last longer. The hard cheeses last longer than the soft cheeses. So you should be looking at hard cheeses, not soft cheeses. These are the sort of things that I would actually store and have in that regard. Anything you can freeze is a good idea. If you can freeze it, freeze it. If you can basically go and look on one of the auction sites or whatever and get a cheap freezer, even better, because then you can store more stuff. So when any shortage does hit, you've got shitloads of stuff in your freezer. You can defrost, and that would be a far better way. Because I usually say, well, even if the freezer is not a good quality one, and it costs you $50 to buy, you only need it for this year, maybe next year, so it doesn't have to last forever. You can throw it out after, but at least you can store a lot of stuff frozen. So when and that would be a much healthier option. So yeah, you've got either the freezer option, or you've got the sort of supplements, powders, butter for the fat soluble vitamins, some B complex for the B vitamins that you need. Those are the sort of things. It depends on if you're in a small unit and you don't have the room to basically put in a freezer, you may have to go for the other option. So it's going to depend on a lot of different things, but I definitely wouldn't touch any plant food. It's a waste of time. It's nutrient poor, not dense food, and so it has very little value, and it's very bulky plant food. It doesn't store well. It doesn't last very long. You take a look at fruit. Fruit won't last very long. The only things that may last is tubers. That's about it. Tubers will last longer, and rice will last longer. You can store that. Probably rice would be the best carbohydrate in terms of to get energy. You won't get a lot of nutrition, but to get energy, and you can store that. So there are not many good options in the carbohydrate world, but in the animal world, you do need freezer capacity, which is it can be a problem for some people. So I hope that sort of gave you some ideas of which way to go in that regard. I've filled up my freezer with a lot of meat. I've got shitloads of meat, and I've got some protein powders, which is sort of bovine grass-fed, good quality powders, as sort of the ultimate fallback. If basically let's say you had food shortages for a very long time, and you ate all your meat, and then you had something to fall back, is the thing. But that is sort of that sort of scenario I don't think will happen. But I'll probably end up throwing that all that protein powder out anyway, because I won't eat it unless I have to. Yeah. Actually, I'll probably give it to my mate. He fucking still uses that shit for his training. So, yeah. But otherwise, yeah, a bit like that. Yep. Yeah, exactly. These years talking more about some creative activities. These scurrilous people against Mick. Poor Mick. Yeah, we are. Yes, I know. Time is flying when you're having fun. Oops, oops, oops. Damn, overshot. Yep, butter smoothies. Yeah, not a good idea to take calcium in high amounts. Definitely not. And in terms of vitamin D, it's when I'm talking about these levels, I'm talking about taking them as a supplement to basically support your immune system at the time when you're actually dealing with corona as well. So we don't want to be over supplementing in that regard. Yep, they were very much. Actually, the Maasai even consume up to as much as 5.5 liters of milk, but they're quite active. They get around, they move around, they use it. So there are those sort of differences, and the body will actually excrete any excess calcium from food. Problem is supplements, are not food. This is where the problem lies. Food, the body knows how to regulate nutrients from food. Any excess, even cholesterol. If you eat shitloads of eggs and the body can't take all that cholesterol in, because you're actually at your basically gut barrier, where beyond the mucosal layer, you've basically got an area where the chylomicrons are sitting. They're in resident. And so basically when the nutrients go in, as much as they can be filled up with cholesterol and all the other nutrients, they'll be sitting there. They're in ranks. Some of them will, because they can go through the whole lymphatic system and get around within 15 to an hour, 15 minutes to an hour. So their resident, their speed around the body is very fast. And then you get chylomicron residents that go to the liver. So, you can only have so many chylomicrons, and it all comes down to the body size of the person, how big they are, and what volume and what capacity they have. And so any excess will then just get excreted. The body tries to maintain a certain level of homeostasis in terms of stuff that comes in and all that. So sort of choked myself. There was something I heard a while ago about taking calcium separate from D as it increased risk of stroke. Not sure about. Yeah. Look, as I said earlier, not a good idea to take any calcium supplements. Zero. Not required. Never should be taken. Very ill-advised. They should come in with the food, and then the food, because they're bound in such a way with the food, if they're in excess, the body can get rid of them. The problem with supplements, they like unrefined sugars, they just go rapidly into the body, and the body really has a difficult time in managing the flow, and that is a problem. Yep, that's another food that you could store. It holds for some time, so that's another option. You can make your own pemmican. Just remember, if you make jerky, which is a different thing altogether, but if you make jerky, you lose a lot of the micronutrients. So just keep that in mind. You can't, especially you don't have any, you pretty much lose practically all vitamin C because it's a water soluble vitamin, and you lose a lot of B vitamins as you push out a lot of the moisture out of the meat. Depends on how much the beef jerky's, how much it's dried, but you do lose a lot of those water soluble vitamins. So keep that in mind. So you can become very rapidly deficient if you try and live off jerky. So do not do that. So what's Kitty saying? Over 25. She's got a bag of rice. Yeah, oh, look, a mate of mine has done the same thing. I don't bother with rice. My sort of attitude is, well, I can always fast for a couple of days, then eat whatever I've got and sort of stretch out the food. Nutrient dense, by definition, is a power calorie thing. Isn't that a fast towards all those unaware of these tricks? When I'm talking about nutrient density, I'm talking about in terms of micronutrients, not calories. There is a word calorie density of foods, and there's nutrient density. Nutrient density means micronutrients. But calorie density, calorically dense foods, as some people would express it as, means, what sort of energy does that food have in its concentration in terms of caloric concentration. So, yeah, that's just to clarify the nomenclature on that. Yeah, look, K2 is pretty good. As I said, K2 is good if especially people that may have dairy issues and don't want to eat a lot of liver and stuff like that. Then a K2 supplement is your alternative. Just get a good quality one in that regard. If you're in the early stages of trying to heal and repair, then I would recommend 5 gram or even higher to saturate your body with, because most people are highly deficient in MK4, which is the form you want to buy. You don't want the MK7. As we said, many people can't even convert that to the animal form. So we just have to be very careful about that. Okay. Okay, thank you, Harry. That was quite info dump. Okay. Yeah, usually I have my little rants in regards to different options, because there's always different options, and never will one thing, be appropriate for another person, because you don't know what storage capacity they've got, the size of their home. There's a lot of factors that are at play in that regard. Distance to a store or access to certain things. So if you've got access to a butcher, fine. Some people don't have access to a butcher and a supermarket, which means, okay, then butter is your best option. Store a lot of butter in your fridge. So there's always going to be different types of options for everyone. It's not going to be, one size fits all. And I'll always try to nuance things in that way to try and help people as much as possible. Sometimes, look, even I'm not perfect. I'll miss certain things and forget about certain things. The dishonesty of the vegetarians by hijacking a term of means. Yep, exactly. Yeah, that's what they do. Because remember, their food is nutrient deficient. And so what they do is they focus on the calories. They make a big fuss about the calories, because fat's got more caloric density per gram. So they make a big fuss about the calories. That's their focus. Because if you take a look at what is a vegan eating? They're eating a whole bunch of sugar, very poor protein, very poor in terms of nutrient density, because the micronutrient density of their food, or the bioavailability of their food, is piss poor. And so they live off macros, which is the caloric component of their food, so caloric density of their food, which is very high in sugar, and basically supplements. So their micronutrient approach is get a supplement. Exactly. That's the dishonesty of the vegetards. But the actual scientific terminology, the correct nomenclature, is that things that are nutrient dense, you're talking about micronutrients. That means vitamins, minerals. These are things, how dense in these things they are. And nutrient poor food is like refined sugar that's got no nutrients. It's just basically got calories, empty calories, But they play around with these terms deliberately to basically, it's all about, smoke and mirrors with him, unfortunately. I'm about to get a workout. Okay. We all need one. Okay, I agree 100% with Harry. Body has the capacity to auto-regulate micronutrients from foods. Yep. But with supplements is another story, precisely. They're not bound in any way, and it's just like anything. We overdose ourselves, and even the liposomal ones, they are definitely over. If you'll get that the body can't even stop that. That will just get into the system because it's encapsulated in basically a lipid type membrane. So it will go straight into the chylomicron, and it will get delivered around, and some of them, depending on what types they are, some of them will go directly into the bloodstream. It depends, the way they're manufactured, a whole lot of things, and the type they are. And so that's it, exactly. And that's why you have to be very careful with these sort of things. That's why I say, we need to support our immune system for that small period if you're in the summer. The Northern Hemisphere, you guys are going now into summer. So get out there and soak those rays. That's what you should be doing. A lot of this information is more applicable to people in the Southern Hemisphere. We're in the autumn now, we're going into winter. So we basically, and I actually say to the people in the Northern Hemisphere, just for this month, this 1 or 2 months in this period before, because you may be in a certain part of the Northern Hemisphere where there's not enough sunlight. So get a supplement just for 1 or 2 months for a short period of time. Build up your vitamin D levels. Then when you're getting into the summer or the later spring part where you've got more UV coming through and all that, get out there and soak it up. That's the best stuff you can get, the natural stuff, because the body can really regulate that really well, much better than a supplement. So yep, that is exactly right. And the way you've put it, Augusta, is actually you've pointed that out even clear, because I sort of talked about it, but I didn't actually make that, I didn't nail that point sufficiently. So thanks for that. Well, it depends. I mean, K2, which is what we're talking about, the MK4, the animal version. If people are not getting enough from certain foods, then supplementation is not a problem. One thing about MK, you can give the body massive amounts of MK4. It'll just suck it all up. So it tends to not. It doesn't seem to have any toxic threshold, and and it doesn't even, and the other thing they have found is you don't get much secretion either, unless it's MK7, the other stuff, the stuff from natto, which is a soya type fermented soya. and about a third of the population can't even convert that to the animal form. So it's a waste of money completely. And different people have different levels of conversion capacity. That is why it remains, MK7 remains resident within the bloodstream. And people talk about it, but they say, oh, that's a good idea because it's staying in the bloodstream. And I'm going, no. You want things being either stored or used. You don't want things to be resident in the bloodstream, circulating around, potentially being damaged, potentially being oxidized, potentially interfering with other biological processes. Not the way the body's meant to work. What should be moving through the bloodstream should be lipids, should be certain things, and it shouldn't be a whole lot of things that the body isn't regulating properly. But MK4 is one of those funny things. It's a sort of an outlier, where the body will take as much as it can, and it works in so many different ways. Your liver has a lot of it, like goose liver pate. Anybody knows? All liver has high MK4, and it's because it uses so much. Even for biosynthesis, you need MK4. For a whole lot of other processes is really important. Again, MK4. So for skin collagen regulation, it's not only retinol plays a big role, but also MK4 plays like a secondary role in that as well. So it's really important. It's just one area after another in the brain, in your basically reproductive organs. MK4 has a role there as well. So it has a pervasive role everywhere. You want to increase your ability to have children, supplement with MK4. So it's one of those. It's great animal fat soluble vitamins that plays a role in so many different parts of the body. And I haven't seen one study that actually has shown that MK4 is toxic even in massive amounts. So the body loves it, uses it. And the problem is, as we get older, it declines. And, it's one of the elements that has actually been shown to be deleterious as we lose the amount in our bodies. I don't think calcium is a problem from milk. Yep, it's not. Definitely not. Pasteurized calcium from pasteurized milk is not a problem either. Pasteurization has other problems, other issues associated with it. Protein folding and all sorts of other issues. Yep. For osteocalcin. Yep, definitely. Because basically you need vitamin D and retinol to activate those osteocalcin type proteins, and to make those proteins, and then MK4 comes along, taps them on. So does MK7, but to a lesser extent, but taps them and basically activates them, and then they do all the bone remodeling and stuff like that, and around the body in that regard. But MK4 is also the only menaquinone of the K2 variety that actually penetrates soft tissue and removes calcification. And that's what I use to reverse my calcification from my cardiovascular issues. So very important. Love how I lose my spot. Okay, back to okay. Just a comment. You should always try to get your nutrients, through food, sun, and bare feet on the earth. The sort of definitely earth yourself. Good idea. Increase that negative charge in your body. Very important. That sounds good. Is that a bit late, mate? God. Okay, fair enough. I'm not here to basically, what's this? What does he say? Gusto got addicted to my grandpa's raw minus cheese. Fair enough. Yes, I have my cheese moments as well. Uh, you got a fan? Don't worry. We're pretty easy about these sort of things, you know. Um, yeah, calcium, all these other things are all bound to oxalates, you know. And I mean, it's got the highest level of oxalate you can find. Yes, I consumed in my paleo keto days, and in that 5-year period, I had three events in hospital, 2 that required surgery in terms of kidney stones. You know, yes, didn't get much nutrition, but I got some kidney stones. That was fun. Yes, me screaming out, "Where's the fucking morphine?" to the nurses. Uh, yep. Yes, cheese is popular. Good to hear. Yips, yips, yips. Is that the cheese? Yeah, it's a crazy world. You know, good nutrition is illegal, and other things that basically make you sick aren't, like seed oils. Yeah, crazy. If anyone has any protein powder suggestions, it would be much appreciated. Um, I want my eyes to glow red like Harry's immortal sockets as I ride out the apocalypse. You probably saw the one that Luke did a while ago. So I think that was last week, wasn't it, Luke? I think it was. Occasional brain fog. But hormone supplements keeps me working, mate. Where was that? We had that other one, didn't we? Where did I have that other one? This was the other one that Luke actually did as well. So do not freeze. Please don't freeze. That's the other one. Oops. Yes, he's outstanding. That damn virus. Thanks, guys. Got me thinking about running out of cheese. Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's why I've bought some additional hard cheese. You know, so just to have, just in case, because the problem is with soft cheese like brie and stuff like that, it doesn't last long enough. I do have one French variety, which is really high. It's got that it's a soft cheese, but it seems to last longer than some of the others. It's got a really thick, really thick, outside layer compared to the regular brie, and it has a higher shelf life. The problem, but even that, it's only a couple of months. It's not like a year or something like that. So I'll tell you one thing, I will, if things like shortages started happening and stuff like that, the thing that I would miss, one of the things that I'd miss the most is brie. I love the stuff. It's that creaminess and all that. Why do people think to stop eating cheese to avoid constipation? Many snack juices or magnesium citrates that might solve the problem. Look, the biggest milk, like cheeses and milk products and stuff like that, it depends on the person, but there are also other factors as well that can play, especially if you consume a lot of cheeses with where it's very high in protein and you don't get a lot of fat, because fat actually acts as a lubricant for the colon. So if you've got really very high protein, you consume a very high type of protein, you can get a sort of it's not constipation in that regard, because constipation is really what people get from high fiber, from a vegetable, really, where they don't go to the toilet for a couple of days, and all that. But I had a case where I was dehydrated because it was very sunny day and all that. And I'd eaten a lot of these cheeses, which were very hard cheeses, not soft cheeses, which have a lot of fat. They had more protein. And I noticed the next day, over 2 days, my feces were much more harder. They weren't as soft, But then, that went regular as I was able to hydrate myself and get more fat in and all that. In the subsequent days, that wasn't a problem. But there was no constipation. I still was able to go, but it was just a bit more, a bit firmer, and there was a bit more strain that actually had to happen to get it out. But it wasn't difficult getting it out. It was more basically that it applied more at the lower part of the anus. It applied more pressure. It seemed to sort of, rather than be normally, which my feces are normally thinner and longer, it was sort of more compacted. And that was basically because, there's, too much protein, not enough fat can be an issue, or not enough salt can be an issue. So these are sort of the things that can have that effect. But, even though I've had that effect from dehydration, too much high protein, I've never had really, because constipation, really, people need to differentiate between hard stool and constipated stool. They're not the same. A constipated stool means you're not actually getting rid of it for a number of days. That's what constipation really is. The other is a hard stool, and that's basically because there's not enough hydration there, or there's not enough fat. So you're not getting enough fat with that food to lubricate the colon. So there are differences in that regard. And, obviously, if you take a supplement like magnesium, it'll actually definitely loosen things, but you don't need to. Just eat more fat. That's the trick. The problem is too many people are consuming far too much protein and neglecting the fat side. And that's, again, another reason why people say, I'm on a carnivore diet and I don't feel energetic. And I say, well, you're eating enough fat. And they look at you and they go, oh, maybe you're not, because they're having all these lean cuts of meat, and or very low, high protein type dairy products, I usually in my milk, I actually put also, because they remove the cream from the milk and they sell it separately so they can make additional money. But raw actual milk is quite creamy. So I put some additional cream into my milk and have it with it additional, so it's more like something coming out of the animal. you know. So, and that means you're not going to have these issues. So it's really, really important in that regard. Just keep that in mind. Just had to put that up. Definitely. Dartboard. New design dartboard. The crackpot dartboard. That's what. Actually, we should, give you some ideas about cracking the crackpot dartboard with all these crackpots on it. Okay, Harry. Is now quicker than me in answering the people. Ha ha ha. Blah. Yeah. Anyway, I have trouble. Fingers are frozen. Yeah, fair enough. I see you somewhere cold. Oops. I lost my spot. Damn. Okay, let's cycle through a few of these things because we're getting up to 3 hours. Does letting cheese age increase menaquinones? That is, it's not a quinone. You're thinking of quinine in tonic water. No, we're talking about menaquinones. That's what the MK stands for. There's a number of menaquinones, there's about 15, I think it is. And they're in different combinations in different foods and all that. Brie and liver are the only foods that are, and eggs are pretty much 100% MK4, these animal foods. Some of the other cheeses, depending on some of the bacteria that are involved, do produce some of the other menaquinones as well. Some are easily converted to MK4 than others. So it varies quite widely in that regard. So now you know why Brie's one of my favourite cheeses. And I'd be really disappointed if we had a Brie shortage. I'd be out there protesting. I want my Brie. So Luke's saying, Harry, how crazed should we be over treating water? I've only mostly used cold ceramic filters my whole life. Good brand, high-end ones. Never seen the need to reverse osmosis. I don't at all. I just basically use a bit more iodine in order to displace the fluoride, but I tend to not consume a lot of anyway. How do I hydrate myself? Milk is one of my major hydration things. I don't drink a lot of water. I actually, I'll have a couple of glasses of milk, 2 glasses of milk a day. I'll get plenty of fat that will basically give me additional that. So yeah, and if I have 2 coffees a day, that's the only water I tend to get. And if I'm thirsty, so I try to get my hydration primarily from fat. That's my focus. In summer, yes, I need more, but in summer also, even though I may get some additional water in there, which is high in deuterium as well, it's 155 parts per million. Unfortunately, the old days, if you go back to the past, in the Paleolithic period, it was around 135 parts per million in terms of deuterium. But as carbon dioxide has gone up, so has deuterium concentration. It's a growth factor which plants use, but also the concentration of carbon dioxide in water has increased. So deuterium has gone up as a consequence. So while it's good for the plants, for growth as a growth factor and all that, for us, it's basically a negative in that regard to consume a lot of water. And the problem is, you can hydrate with fat, 1.1 grams, and animals that consume like from cactus, which is depleted in deuterium, has very low deuterium levels in the water. So it's probably the only animal that never gets sick, doesn't have any cancer or any issues, as a camel. Doesn't even, you can't even notice it's aging. It really just ends up dying in old age without actually really showing much aging at all, because it's a deuterium depleting machine. So deuterium depletion is very important to keeping it down. So I will drink when I need it, and if I'm basically dehydrate, or from the sun I'm out and I'm losing fluids, that UV will basically also help deplete my levels of deuterium. But obviously you don't want to be doing things like drinking your urine. That's not a good idea. 150 to 300 parts per million, very high. Remember, sea oils have got 255 parts per million. So anybody telling you to drink your urine, tell them to go take a fucking hike. So yes, so I don't really, as I said, I don't really bother because I don't consume enough to have a real problem with that issue in that regard. And spring water, if I can get it, I'll get it. So yeah, the water supply is an issue in that regard with fluoride for a lot of people, especially that are unaware that they need probably a bit more iodine in there to displace in the thyroid, to displace the fluoride. So obviously there are other things that also you have to be careful about as well. So okay, we're at 3 hours. We'll just cycle. I'll really cycle quite quickly through this. Most people are making comments. And anyway, so we're pretty. Daniel's back. Good to see you, mate. We're just about to finish. So thanks, guys. We had a much longer session that I was planning, so it's about a bit over 3 hours now. This was fun, enjoyable. I think we covered quite a few things, different issues and stuff like that. Good day, Patricia. So some latecomers from the North American part of the world. Look, she'll be able to watch it right after. So in that regard, so we had the previous one. This is the Euro one, and so my sort of focus is to try and cover different parts of the globe as much as possible. So this is a sort of, I call it the Euro one, but it's sort of Eurasia to Australasia and beyond. It's just that I started using the word of Euro live stream and sort of it just stuck, and I just left it. So I'm not going to change it because at the time I had quite a few UK people that were jumping on, so that was part of it. I'm happy that people enjoyed it and had some fun and all that. Don't forget to please hit the like button, and if you haven't subscribed, I think most of you guys have subscribed, but if there's one or two amongst you, please subscribe as well, and please share it as well, because getting some of the information around. Look, you may not want to necessarily share all the live streams. That's fair enough. I don't make a big issue of it. If you can, thank you. If you can't, at least those shorter ones, the Corona ones, or some of the others that I've got in there that may interest some of the people that please at least share those so people can get some additional information, especially how they can protect themselves with this virus and all that, and some of the mitigation strategies and stuff like that. So that's why I'm on here, to try and get some information out and help people as much as possible. Yep, you're welcome, mate. Thanks. And thank you as well. Yep, and try to make it as enjoyable as possible. And, thanks to my dear friends, Where's that other one? Let me just find it. I've got to find it. Nope, that's not it. Oh, where did I put it? Where did I put it? Damn. Hold on, I'll find it. A sec. Ah, here it is. We need this one. The virus killer. That'd be handy, be able to do that. And I hit the other one. Where did I put the other one? This is a favorite. I know people love this one as well. This is definitely one of my favorites. I'm like a cyborg. Nanomotors, mate. Nanomotors. Thanks, Luke. I thought I'd throw that in. Thanks, Augusto. Good to have you here. See you, Bo. And see you as well. I'll just flow through the last ones quickly. Thanks, guys. Have a good day. Wherever you are, take care. And thanks for your support. Always appreciated. And look, take care and keep yourself safe. And, hopefully things won't get too crazy out there. Look after yourselves, your families, try and get some information out there to help them, get them a bit prepared, because a lot of people are still unprepared for a lot of these sort of things. And all we can do is just sort of share our information around, all of us. That includes you guys as well. And sometimes you guys bring up certain points which are helpful to me, because I can then go, okay, let me investigate this a bit further, because I'm an inquisitive person, and I'm glad that you guys are also inquisitive, and you prompt me and push me a bit to basically look at other things, and and try to because ultimately this is by our interplay. I mean, yes, we have our fun time as well, but our interplay is helpful to me as well, because it allows me to basically, go away and look at other things, and come back and try and, nuance things a bit further and a bit deeper to help you guys, to make more sense of the world, So, see you, Bo. Good night, guys. Anyway, or good day, wherever you are, especially in North America. It's early in the morning. So thanks for basically tuning in, and take care, and see you guys next week at our regular time slot. So it'll be basically, the live stream will be back right after Bart's next week. So, so we will be back to the regular slot, just because of Greek Easter tomorrow. I won't be able to. I may in the morning pop into Bart's for a while, but I won't be there for very long. That's about it. Anyway, take care. See you guys. Good night or good day. Bye.